Despite Metallica's success, they were pretty feisty.
Lars, when he punches you in the face, when James punches you in the face, can he throw a punch?
And if they could duke it out amongst themselves, they most definitely showed other bands their ugly side. They sure did rock, but they didn't roll with everyone, and things would go as far as refusing to tour with some of them.
There was a lot of bands that, were talking crap about us,
Despite all this, they did find success. With over 120 million records sold, 9 Grammy wins, and 2 separate Hall of Fame inductions, the titans of thrash metal and juggernauts of rock music, Metallica made the type of music that definitely shaped the genre. And maybe refusing to tour with some bands helped them become the legends that they are. They did reconcile with some bands, but some feuds live on to this day. But some of their reasons were just petty and selfish, while others were harsh but understandable. Starting our list is band number 8 is Nickelback. Canada's biggest rock band since the 2000s and one of the genre's biggest names, like Metallica, sounds like what would be the tour of the decade, but only in the imagination of fans. Nickelback may have made the gap between their success and Metallica's smaller in such a quick time, but that didn't change the fact that these bands were in vastly different worlds. Metallica is a band whose concerts can be described as chaotic. Their roaring riffs, whiplash tempos were on the opposite side of the rock spectrum where Nickelback found themselves. The Canadian band performing in front of Metallica fans would have looked more odd than a polar bear in Texas. Despite this, the bromance between these two groups should have been enough to overlook their creative differences. Metallica's Rob Trujillo has been showing the band love when the rest of the rock and roll world wasn't. In an interview with Music Blog, the guitarist said this: "Listen, the guys in Nickelback are super cool, okay? That's what I'm gonna say. I actually know the bass player and he's awesome." Although it's never been clearly stated, the biggest reason why they have never toured together could be that they just had too much to deal with. When Nickelback was gaining traction, Metallica had just released Saint Anger. This was an album that was not received well, and it had damaged Metallica's reputation so much that they had to earn some of their fans back. Nickelback was also dealing with a lot of public backlash because people generally didn't like their music and not just an album, and this was something that no band understood better than Metallica. Nickelback's lead singer Chad Kroeger recalled how James Hetfield could relate to them on a personal level. "My brother, Mike, the bass player in the band, he hangs out with James Hetfield a lot in Maui, so the two of them are hanging out a lot together. And right when you think that you're the only one who gets it, the backlash, Mike's like, oh no. James pretty much thinks the entire world hates him. I'm like, really? Suddenly I don't feel so bad anymore." These two bands may have shared their grief, but that didn't mean sharing a stage would have been a good idea. Another group Metallica have regret sharing a stage with is band number 7, Guns N' Roses. On paper, Metallica and Guns N' Roses co-headlining a stadium tour in 1992 was the kind of concert no metalhead would want to miss. Two of the biggest hard rock acts in the world, back to back, every night. But a month into the tour, August 8, 1992, something terrible happened. Something that would never allow Metallica's relationship with Guns N' Roses ever to be the same.
The pyro guy doesn't see me that I've walked back out there. A big colored flame goes right up under me. So I'm burnt, all my arm, my hand completely down to the bone. The side of my face, hair gone.
This was a disaster of epic proportions. Metallica couldn't continue, especially not with James Hetfield on his way to a hospital. But you know what they say, the show must go on. And there was a whole other co-headlining act. Guns N' Roses had the chance to save the concert and salvage the night. But instead, they made things worse.
"Well, thanks to the lame-ass security, I'm going home."
Guns N' Roses didn't finish their set. Axl Rose's vocals were off. He felt a gimmick like crowd surfing could save the day, but that was the final straw. The fans were totally livid, and a full-blown protest followed.
At least 8 police and 10 concertgoers sustained minor injuries in the melee that followed.
Guns N' Roses faced public backlash, and their relationship with Metallica became strained. It's been over 3 decades since that tour. Both bands have played to millions, reformed lineups, and even shared a friendly backstage moment in 2025. But a full-scale co-headlining tour? Never again. Because for Metallica, that night in Montreal wasn't just a bad gig, it was a lesson. Some partnerships, no matter how epic on paper, aren't worth repeating. And that's why, when you look at Metallica's touring history since '92, you'll notice a very specific absence. Guns N' Roses is nowhere to be found. While Metallica remains fixed on their position of never touring with Axl Rose and his crew, they've changed their minds about other groups, like band number 6, Limp Bizkit. It's the late 90s and early 2000s. Metallica are the kings of metal. Limp Bizkit are the loud, wild rebels of nu metal. Both are huge. You would think they would hit the road together. They didn't. For over 20 years, it never happened. This was not an accident. Metallica built their name on grit and skill. Their shows were tight, powerful, and controlled. Limp Bizkit thrived on chaos. Fred Durst wore the backwards cap, stirred the crowd, and made headlines for his attitude. To some, he was a hero. To others, he was trouble. We already know how most memes of Metallica feel about bands that invest a little too much in their appeal at the expense of their sound and craft. But it seems Limp Bizkit didn't do it enough to get on Metallica's nerves. Limp Bizkit joined the Summer Sanitarium tour, but they were not equals. They opened for Metallica. During one show, Fred Durst walked off stage without warning. The crowd was stunned. The result was a 90-minute delay before Metallica could play. Incidents like that can kill future partnerships. Limp Bizkit were lucky Metallica still let them share a stage after everything that happened 4 years ago in Woodstock. Other bands from that tour have admitted something. Touring with Metallica is hard. Every light, every sound, every moment is planned. Limp Bizkit preferred to keep things loose and unpredictable. They obviously didn't belong in the same space. Metallica also had their own struggles in 2003. Jason Newsted had left the band. James Hetfield had just finished rehab. Their new album, Saint Anger, divided fans. They were not looking to add more drama to the mix. So the years passed. No tour, no co-headlining deal. Just one messy moment in 2003 and a lot of what if. Then came 2025. The impossible finally happened. Limp Bizkit joined Metallica's M72 World Tour in North America. This time, there were no walk-offs, no delays, no drama. Fans watched in disbelief. After 22 years, two worlds finally shared the same stage, and it felt less like a concert and more like history coming full circle. Speaking of full circle moments, Metallica may have some unfinished business with this next set of rock stars. Band number 5, Green Day. Sometimes style may be a reason why bands refuse to tour with others. But if two bands really like each other despite their artistry, they'll make it happen. While Metallica's thrash sound kept them away from pop and punk-sounding bands during the 80s and 90s, the 2000s saw bands from different genres of rock perform together more often. Metallica haven't performed with Green Day, but they have performed in place of them. The 2012 iHeartRadio Festival in Las Vegas wasn't one that Green Day were proud of. That's because frontman Billy Joe Armstrong threw a fit on stage. This was after he had a medical emergency in Bologna, Italy in early September, and with what had transpired, Green Day couldn't continue, not with their frontman behaving like that. When Green Day couldn't make their festival slot, organizers reached out and Metallica answered. Lars Ulrich made a public statement saying, "Our good friends and fellow Bay Area residents, Green Day had to unfortunately cancel their plans to be there, so we are more than happy to fill in for them in our own unique way. We're hoping we can fill those very large shoes and do them proud." What makes this even sadder is that Metallica had plans to go on tour with Green Day. In an MTV interview, Lars Ulrich revealed plans his band made with U2 and Green Day. He said, "U2 came to San Francisco 2 summers ago, and we ended up having a lot to drink with them and Green Day following a dinner. I was told in the wee morning hours following this outing that members of U2, Green Day, and Metallica agreed to tour together. We haven't talked about it since, but speaking for myself, I'd be very up for that." But with Billy Joe Armstrong in rehab by the end of 2012, this tour never saw the light of day, and Metallica wouldn't want to have a tour with Green Day and leave him out of the picture. But these next guys knew they never belonged anywhere near Metallica. I'm talking about band number 4, Offspring. They were just popping off in the 90s, right when Metallica were touring with music from their well-received album, the Black Album. But for some reason, Offspring never toured with Metallica. And it wasn't because Metallica refused to tour with them, but the other way around. Why? Well, for the most modest of reasons. They felt Metallica was too good for them. In a 2024 interview, Offspring guitarist Kevin Noodles Wasserman revealed this. Nothing against Metallica. We love those guys, but we didn't feel like we were a professional band. We didn't think we were good enough to go out and do that. And this really wasn't a case of Offspring lowballing themselves. They were being honest. When their album Smash exploded in 1994, it caught the Offspring off guard. They weren't seasoned arena performers yet. Noodles explained, "We wanted to start in small clubs and work our way up, build and become a professional band over time. In an industry where pride is everything, this amount of self-awareness was unprecedented. If they had crumbled under the pressure of touring with Metallica, they might never have recovered from it." One thing Metallica never really recovered from was their tour with the band. While Offspring shied away from performing with Metallica, James Hetfield and his band actually wanted to play with this next act. Band number 3, Black Sabbath. They say you should never meet your mentors, but nobody ever said anything about going on tour with them and playing at the same concerts. But Metallica have always looked up to Black Sabbath. In an interview, Kirk Hammett explained just how important Black Sabbath were to their music. He said, "If it wasn't for those 4 guys, man, we might still be just kind of like wandering around in the dark." But the fact that they created a genre, not only created it, but then developed it and then turned it into like a few different things over the course of their career is completely awe-inspiring to me and my peers musically. I mean, how do you thank someone like that? And it's not as if Metallica flat out refused to tour with Black Sabbath. It's more a case of bad timing. Kirk Hammett was just a 6-year-old when Black Sabbath hit the scene. When Metallica started making waves in the rock world, they were opening acts for Ozzy Osbourne, who was a former member of Black Sabbath. Their affiliation with him made it hard to really be part of anything that had to do with Black Sabbath. Metallica's rise was so meteoric that by the 90s, they weren't the type of bands that were considered opening act material. But unlike these other bands, their touring drama has a happy ending.
Please say hello to my friend Ozzy.
Metallica were part of Black Sabbath's 2025 Back to the Beginning tour. And the fact that Ozzy Osbourne was part of the tour meant they weren't conflicted about joining in on the tour. At long last, Metallica got to share the stage with their idols, and they didn't miss their chance to let people know how they felt about the British band.
We are here to celebrate Black Sabbath tonight, a decade or so late.
What's better than meeting your heroes is becoming them. And truthfully speaking, Metallica is the Black Sabbath of their generation. And as one of the best thrash metal bands, it's hard to share success with groups that don't share your style. And that's what happened between Metallica and band number 2, Kiss. They were formed 8 years before Metallica, but their best years were in the same period. These two bands have shared the spotlight as some of the best groups in the genre and the very best in their subgenres. More often than not, bands this big and successful share the stage at some point, but Metallica and Kiss never did. But why? Most times, when bands this big never perform together, it's because of their egos or a rivalry. But that's something these two bands never had. James Hetfield, Lars Ulrich, and the rest of Metallica were easygoing people within the rock industry. Paul Stanley and the rest of Kiss were pacifists themselves. There are even clips of the two bands practicing together and sharing a few laughs. So if animosity isn't the reason these two bands never toured together in the 80s to the 2010s, then what is? Well, the answer lies in their artistic difference. On one hand, you had Kiss, a band whose fame hinged mainly on their visuals and theatrics. You can imagine how non-conforming to be considered a rebel for a genre like rock. Fireworks, leather costumes with spikes. There weren't many bands that shared their vision on things. And one of those bands just happened to be Metallica. When James Hetfield and his crew normally headline a tour, it leaves little room for other acts to truly express themselves. And Kiss is not the type of music group to be put in a box. That's the whole point of their glam subgenre. But art styles aren't the only thing that separates these two giants. In a 2014 interview, Metallica's James Hetfield had a few words about rock bands that continued touring after going on farewell tours. "I don't think that's fair to anyone. Kiss's farewell tour for the 10th time? Scorpions were done, and then they tour? You can't say that and then not do it. I don't know what's in store for us. I don't want to go on the history of how other bands have done it. We're unique in our own path, and unique in how our path ends." Calling Kiss hypocrites and labeling them as unoriginal sounds diabolical. But Hetfield's words weren't coming from a place of malice. As a matter of fact, Kiss is still doing performances after announcing their retirement is the reason why they later got to share a stage with them. The two bands performed at the 2022 Copenhagen Festival. This wasn't a tour, and some band members were even grandfathers at that point. But it made fans wonder just how incredible a joint tour between these two in their primes would have been. Another thing that fans can't help but imagine is a joint tour between Metallica and this band that they know a little too well. Band number 1, Megadeth. Metallica's relationship with Megadeth is a complicated one with a lot of history. Megadeth was formed by Metallica's former lead guitarist, Dave Mustaine. Booting him seemed harsh, but given the circumstances, it was really the best thing for both parties. So in 1983, Mustaine started his own group, Megadeth. Here, he had full control of things, and he could get all the credit for the group's musical direction, something he felt he never got while at Metallica. And despite starting from scratch, Mustaine and Megadeth managed to enter the Big Four conversation when it came to the biggest thrash metal bands. Despite Megadeth's newfound success, they never got to tour with Metallica. None of the members of Metallica have come out to state why a joint tour never happened, but Mustaine felt he knew why. In an interview with Guitar World, he said this: "Metallica are represented by the same agent as Megadeth, and I've asked our agent, you're Metallica's agent too. Why won't those guys play with us? What are they afraid of?" And they've confirmed they're going out with Five Finger Death Punch and the Pantera thing, so it's clearly about the money. A joint concert tour between Megadeth and Metallica was something even the fans wanted, and there was no reason to believe that it wouldn't sell out. But here's the thing: Dave Mustaine has actually performed on the same stage as Metallica since their split. But it wasn't with Megadeth. Oh no. He joined his former band for their 30th anniversary show at the Fillmore in San Francisco, where they played some of their old songs. But he did this without Megadeth, so this can't count as Megadeth performing with Metallica. If both bands say there's no bad blood, maybe a joint tour is in the works. With all of them older than ever, they're running out of both time and the youthful flair they once had. But how do you feel about these bands Metallica refused to tour with? Do you think their reasons were justified? And which band do you wish they had gone on tour with? Let us know what you think in the comment section, and which band do you want us to cover next?